Taxes are the only certainty. Will 20% of people of society? Yes, I have made it on my own in this world. Will not take care of time around a 2-year-old. I'm gonna stop the old nation and do my own thing, 'cause I will be king. I'm gonna stop the old nation with the self-preservation. I'm gonna stop the old nation with the self-preservation. Well, let me talk a bit about the weather. You must admit it's not very clever. Don't get me wrong, it's not an anti-British song. Well, there is nowhere I would rather be wrong. I'm gonna stop the old nation and do my own thing, and I will be king. I'm gonna stop the old nation with the self-preservation. I'm gonna stop the old nation with the self-preservation. There are just a few things that I would like to say about the UK and how I think it has gone astray. Don't get me wrong, it ain't all bad. I love the crazy fads, like England always buggering up, but you know we're gonna win the World Cup. I'm gonna stop the old nation with the self-preservation. I'm gonna stop the old nation with the self-preservation.
Keep the red flag flying here.
Oh, I'm waiting for that. It never happened. Hello, everybody. It's great to see you. What an exciting evening. You've got to admit that it's exciting. And we may mention it once or twice. But welcome to the show. Welcome to the wonderful panel. Paul Daly. Love the dress, Paul. Lovely to see you. No, Laura's standing in for Paul on the tech desk, and so we can express a seamless display of competence from her, and we're looking forward to it. Well done, Laura. Laura, you're fantastic. None of us could do it. Welcome, Stuart. Hello.
Hello.
Mr. Cool, as always. And hi, Jane. It's so good to see you.
Hello, thank you. It's good to see you too.
Oh, no, it's wonderful. So, you're always so enthusiastic, Jane, and we love that enthusiasm. Hang on to it. So let's move straight on to... enough, we have two real moments of the week. You may have thought there was only one moment of the week, but there are going to be three. Jane, what had been your moment of the week?
So my moment of the week has been housing woes. So the big issues reported on housing this week about this really infuriating idea about 50-year mortgages, and the fact that over 100 MPs earn significant rental income on a second property. They reckon about £2.6 million a year MPs earn on rental income, and that they're 3 times as likely now to own a second home than a generation ago. And I'm so sad that we can't just look as a society at the fact that housing has become unaffordable. And now we've decided that the right thing to do is lumber a generation that's not even born with a debt, just to mean that people who already have a lot of wealth can carry on getting even wealthier. It just makes me so sad.
Thank you. It all goes back to Thatcher and the fact that they've sold them on, but they haven't built new council houses. Council houses are the answer. We all know that. And they're just kicking against the pricks. Stuart, your moment of the week.
My moment of the week is that it's the NHS's birthday. The NHS is 74. And obviously there's a huge love for all the key workers and certainly the staff and the practitioners in the NHS itself. At the weekend on Saturday, it's going to be Durham Big Meeting, the gala, which is dedicated to key workers. Principally, it will be the NHS, the people who dragged us out of that sorry mess that was the COVID crisis. And it just, today, above all else, I think it needed stating that we are very thankful for the NHS and what it's meant to do, what it stands for, what it should do.
And very critical of the way it's been systematically wrecked over the past decade. Thank you very much. And Laura, do you have a moment of the week?
I mean, nothing really exciting or special has happened this week, so I guess, I mean, to be fair, even if I did have one, it went out the window about an hour ago when I found out that, as somebody so lovingly put it, the Tories are jumping ship. Resignations abound in the Tory party. I think definitely signs that all is not cushy in the Tory party. So that it just has to be, doesn't it? I'm excited to see, well, excited might be the wrong word, but I'm intrigued to see what's going to come of all these resignations. Two really, really high profile ones, Sajid Javid, Rishi Sunak, were the first ones I'd heard about, and a lot of others have since resigned. So yeah, I mean, have they all just lost confidence? Where were the votes for the no confidence vote? What's going on? And will this result in a general election? It'll certainly, for me, result in Boris having to leave and somebody else take up the mantle of the leader of the Tory party. So yeah, it has to be moment of the week for me.
I mean, do you think the first thing is that they're doing what they did to Corbyn sort of a few years ago? They're all just having a mass resignation and hoping it'll leave him with no alternative but to resign. Do you think that he'll resign?
I think that's sort of underestimating Boris Johnson's selfishness. I think he has complete confidence in his own awesomeness. I think he will not resign. I think he will be pushed rather than jump. I do think he will end up going, whatever way that will be. And I think in true Tory style, somebody else will come in and that person will have a shiny new outlook on life, and the last 15 years never happened. And we can just vote for this Tory party, not the last one. But actually, if it quacks like a duck...
What do you think, Jane? What's your reaction to all is this just going to be something that will be brushed under the carpet and we'll move on, or do you think it's curtains?
I think he'll just cling on for dear life. It depends on how many powerful people with authority are pushing from behind the scenes, I think. I'm like really happy to see this happening and then really frightened of what might be coming in its place. So mixed feelings.
Have you anybody that you tip for the top, if should he go?
Is this in reality, or is this if I had a choice about it?
No. Who is it in reality? Who do you think would take up?
I just feel like Michael Gove's been behind the scenes, edging towards a challenge for quite a long time.
Gooby. Gooby.
I think that's just hysteria. That's all you can do now. Laugh or cry.
Will the Tories choose someone even funnier looking than Boris Johnson? That's so hilarious. Righty-ho. Laura, who would you tip for the top?
Oh my goodness me. I mean, to be honest, I would have thought somebody like Rishi Sunak could have potentially made it, but I'm not so sure now that he's resigned. I honestly don't know. I'm wondering how, because they've successively gone from bad to worse, you know, to think that David Cameron was the best of a bad bunch, you know? Bring back David Cameron.
Theresa May, all is forgiven. I'm coming to you, Stuart, in 2 seconds, but sort of there's just some things happening. Neil Terry has been very rude. He says his local newspaper has said that Javid resigning is another blow for Boris Johnson. This is, and he says they didn't know what they'd said. It's a reference to something that Boris Johnson was caught doing with his then girlfriend. And Neil, as always, is being just about as rude as one is possible to be. So I draw attention to it. Neil also told us that the NHS is marching in Leeds on Saturday, so that will be really wonderful. Tim Dredge points out that Jeremy Corbyn is coming to Durham. I think he said it's sold out, but that will be very exciting. Laura, Mia asks how Paul is. How is he?
Paul's on the mend. He's doing a lot better. He's still exhausted from the pain, so hence the reason I'm taking over again tonight. But his skin's grown back, so that's a bonus, and he's doing well. He's got to go back in a couple of weeks to get x-rayed again to see if his thumb is healing as they'd like it to. But yeah, I'm sure he's appreciative of your well wishes. He's doing a lot better than he was.
All our love to him. Jacqueline Hemmings, Johnson is too arrogant and narcissistic to resign. And then she said, please don't let it be Priti Patel. I think that's even more horrific than Gove, for goodness sake. Right, and finally, Stuart, what's your take on this? Are we heading towards, what I've been predicting all along is that they'll put somebody smooth in, he'll have 6 months and he'll go to the electorate saying, hey guys, I need 5 years. Too early to judge me. Give me 5 years to prove myself. And the gullible electorate will be fooled into it. What? I mean, do you think we're heading for an early election?
I think that Boris Johnson's self-interest will put a general election on the cards. If he had any sense, he wouldn't. And for the sake of his own party, he wouldn't. But it's likely that he will. He's shown that he puts self-interest above all else. And certainly the Tory party will try and rebrand. And it's up to us to call them out and say, look, it's the same ghouls, it's the same inmates running the asylum. It doesn't matter which one it is who's got the top job. Our job is to make sure there's an actual alternative that protects people, protects their livelihoods, gives them the opportunity they need. We can't let the Conservative Party create this idea that they are, a reinvention of themselves, because they've not in reality changed for decades.
Yeah, well, they've got worse, haven't they? Move to the right and just become more and more reckless. I mean, what will all over the country, Stuart, there are constituencies without a layer. I mean, we've been shouting at them, haven't we, to get on with selecting candidates, and they just have not been doing it. I mean, what's going to happen in the Labour Party, do you predict, if an early election did happen?
Ultimately, it would be an incredible scramble. It would be a huge effort to get people prepared, set up. And obviously, the concern is that it would be less democratic because of that. So it's up to members to shout and make sure that it's the most democratic process that they can have, if they wish to elect the people that they care about and know could make a difference for their constituency.
So, do you think, I mean, has tonight, I mean, we're joking about the fact that there's only one thing to talk about, but I mean, do you think that tonight has thrown politics in England into absolute chaos? Or do you think it's just a slightly larger wave on the water?
My understanding is that because we've got such a volatile electorate and political situation, that we have been on high alert now for 2 years, waiting for Boris Johnson to crash the car, and ultimately now it could be that time, the events day boy events and all that. But my understanding is that the political parties are prepared for that volatility, that they have been mobilising around that volatility, that they sit in a quiet room watching numbers as everything pours in and preparing to go. The things that will be short of will be the people with their names out there to be recognisable, to have built the connection with people in the community that they're the right person to elect. That requires time in itself. You can't win a government of change on a 7-week campaign.
No, that's just such a wise thing to say, Stuart. Jane, you're the only person who can really answer this. You and I can talk. I mean, my fear is what we're going to find is that this is all been intended, and that we're going to have Starmerite nominees foisted upon constituency after constituency to a great degree of unrest. I mean, do you think that's fair, or do you think that there's another way of doing this? I think we're just going to have be told who are our candidates, and they're going to be all Starmer supporters.
So we're choosing our candidate in our constituency at the moment, and the shortlisting was done by regional, but the members will be voting for our choice of 3 shortlisted members by regional. There's been some very undemocratic choices and things done by the party in the last few years, and I've no doubt there will be constituencies that will have very little choice about what happens to them. But I think what really worries me is that over the last 2 years I've seen so many really dedicated, energetic, invested people leave the party, and they're people who would have been going out campaigning before, and they're people who would have been standing as really good candidates, and they're just not there to stand anymore because they don't feel they've got a home in the party as it is now. And I really worry about the opportunity that opens up to mitigate the damage to the Tory party when Labour's a little bit injured itself. We really need a strong alternative and lots of people voting for it. We don't need voter disengagement and apathy. That's the thing that will give the Tories a minority government.
We don't need member disengagement and apathy either, because they're the people who've got to go out and win those votes. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you for your comments, team. Mark Lungley has just arrived. Have we done Moment of the Week? Because it was the chain makers on Saturday when we celebrate the women chain makers of Old Hill and Cradley Heath strike of 1910. Thank you for that major important Moment of the Week, Mark. And throws the other ones into insignificance. It throws the things we've been discussing into utter insignificance. God bless you all. Right, okay. Laura?
Now it's time for the big story.
And the big story this week is Nicola Sturgeon and Scottish Independence back on the menu again. Stuart, the reason it's back on the menu is that Sturgeon asked Johnson for a Section 30 order, which allows them to have a referendum, and he refused. So first question to you, Stuart, was he wrong to refuse? Should he have let them have their referendum?
I think it comes down to whether you think a referendum is the cause or the effect of Scottish independence. ultimately, I don't think it would be the cause. Having a referendum, having the discussion, isn't what gives you independence. And because of that, ultimately, I don't think the Scottish Parliament is in any way kind of infringing on what they can and what they can't do. Certainly, I know it's in the Scotland Act, isn't it, where they can't make legislation with regards to the union of England and Scotland, which is the hold up in this situation. Now, whether a referendum would infringe on that lack of remit, that lack of capacity, is what the court would rule on. But ultimately, no matter which way it goes, Nicola Sturgeon said that it would push the SNP as a one issue party, and in a way kind of making the next general election a de facto referendum. And while there's no such real thing legally, it would get a good sense of the kind of mistreatment of a Westminster government if you can prove that point in the population, in the popular mind, and you've got the evidence that Boris Johnson's government said no.
I mean, it's been said that Sturgeon's strategy here is just not fair politics, that it's playing games with politics. I mean, is it irresponsible of her?
I think part of the motivation is the kind of politics that she aspires to have for the nation. Now, the current make, it's somewhere like 50%, isn't it? The opinion on independence in Scotland. And as we've learned, that's, always a bad kind of position to be in if you're going to have any referendum of sorts. But what you want, I think, with like politics now, if you look to Northern Ireland and the kind of politics that Sinn Féin came out with, and they moved away from being a single issue party to being focused on the issues that really mattered to voters, and they saw a dramatic increase in the trust and alignment to their politics. Now, for me, Scotland, by the SNP going to a single issue party, reduces their influence. It reduces their place in people's minds, which affecting their lives. If they make it a single issue, I think it's going backwards on the politics and the opportunities for the nation, and ties it far too much to a small number of people's intentions and perhaps political priorities.
Never thought of that. I mean, that's a really brilliant thought, Stuart. I mean, the fact that in fact there may be a whole load of people who vote SNP because of the SNP's policies about healthcare and education and all those other things. And if the SNP sort of say, no, it's got to be on independence, they may turn away from the SNP, might damage the SNP. I mean, sort of one of the questions was, it was last time, it was 55-45 on the referendum. I mean, do you think she'll win? Do you think she'll get her mandate for independence, or do you think she'll lose? What do you feel about that?
I'm not a Scottish national. My father was Scottish and he was very pro Scottish independence. But again, this is one of those questions that is for the people of Scotland and only for the people of Scotland, which is why I think there is still a feeling that they should be asking the questions and having the debate, and whether that results in independence or not, I don't know if it's the right time, but ultimately, is it my place as an Englishman to decide their future? It's completely against what I think with regards to self-determination, but politically, timing-wise, I don't think it's the opportune moment as yet.
You see, previously, I'm prepared to be wrong on this. I'm prepared to agree with you. But previously, I thought exactly the opposite, Stuart. I thought that when somebody, we're a united kingdom of 4 countries, and Scotland leaving majorly affects me as an individual. It certainly affects England as a country, and Wales and Northern Ireland. And I wondered how much right any one of those four nations has just to sort of say, no, we're off and beggar the rest of you.
The Scotland Act in itself states that we are a union of equals. And I don't think that in any other situation in a union of equals, if it was nations or if it was a marriage, that one single person or, party in that could say to the other, you can't leave, I'll be worse off. How many marriages would end up in disastrous situations if that was the principle that we all stuck by? I know it's, a grand escalation to talk about nation states along those lines, but I think there's something in that we haven't been treating Scotland as an equal partner in this union, which is why there's a feeling for independence in the first place. And if we want to resolve any, issues going forward with regards to independence, and we feel like this is, beneficial for both nations to be a union, we do need to reaffirm the idea that this is a partnership of equals, and it isn't Westminster dictating to Scotland what Scotland can and can't do.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm sorry I smiled when you were talking, and I wasn't laughing at what you were saying. It's just that Laura grabbed a water cooler and poured the contents of a water cooler down her throat. What on earth is going on? And singers have interrupted. I'll tell Neil Terry off. Leave me alone, Neil Terry. Apparently, it's Cradley. Oh, I'm supposed to know this. Sort of. So there we go. I've got two more questions for you. To what extent is the decision of the SNP and Nicola Sturgeon the fault of the Conservative government in Westminster? Stuart.
See, this is, right, I'm taking a moment to think because this is ultimately such a big thing. But as I remember it, the relationship between Scotland and Labour as a government, I was a child at the time, it seemed quite positive. Now, I don't know if that was reflective of just how I felt or the reality of it, but certainly it does feel like there's been a concern. Boris Johnson's government and the Conservative governments before them have been kind of scooping all the power into one place and making sure, for the most part, it's in London. It's within a 3-mile square block. And certainly that's got to hurt the feeling of the people of Scotland when they've been, offered, a parliament devolution, a deal where they can decide their own futures. And to see stuff taken away must be, not just damaging economically or, with regards to how they do healthcare, but it's also got to be damaging to a nation who is, fundamentally built on the idea that, they're Scots, that there's a built-in destiny. If you go to Scotland and you read some of the poems and the art and the whole culture is about them being so self-defined in their struggle at times against the English. You can see where the populist feeling has come about from.
I've just got one last question, and Tim Dredge and Quantum Skyline have both flagged it up. I mean, to what extent is this a fallout of Brexit?
Well, clearly we all know that Scotland voted in favour of staying in the EU, and fundamentally we also know that Scotland has faced some of the hardest challenges with regards to Brexit. Certainly around a lot of its industries have been hit the hardest, and that feels like they've taken a bullet for a decision that they didn't take. You can certainly sense the anger. I know the fishing industry was incredibly hard hit. A lot of the exporters have simply had to cease business completely because it's completely incompatible with operating in the EU. They've been left hung out to dry. And certainly there's been no real recognition in Westminster of the damage that's been done to Scotland.
Thank you. Thank you for your knowledge, Stuart. Thank you for those answers. You've really enlightened me and got me thinking. Laura, would independence ruin Scotland? If Scotland got its wish and got independence, would it be terminally disastrous for Scotland? Is Scotland big enough or strong enough to be able to go? I mean, even Nicola Sturgeon now is beginning to sort of talk about a long time of readjustment, hard times following. I mean, would it be a silly decision on shit? I mean, I understand the point that it's perhaps a decision you want to take on grounds of nationalism or pride or self-determination. But on simple, practical terms of how much money is in my pocket, would it be a daft decision for Scotland to take?
I mean, I don't think we can sort of label it simply silly or daft. I think listening to the things that Nicola Sturgeon's been saying, she seems to be approaching it in a much more sensible way than our government did in terms of leaving the EU. You know, we were meant to have this oven-ready deal all ready to go. Leaving the EU was going to be sorted. You know, a contract that took 40 odd years to put together, we were just getting rid of in a day. Whereas she's going in this with her eyes open, sort of saying we recognise that we are going to have to sort out some deals. There's a lot we're going to have to fix. So I don't necessarily think it will be a silly decision. I think losing Scotland would be a major blow for us as a nation. You know, I think we work really well together. I know loads of people from Scotland and they're all amazing, you know, and also not to mention the fact that, you know, the Labour Party used to be quite strong up there, and if we lose Scotland, the chances of the Labour Party getting into government ever again are very slim. You know, so we've got all of those sorts of things to think about, but ultimately what it comes down to is democracy and what the Scottish people want. And if, you know, the last referendum was dangerously close. It was so close. And, you know, we argued the fact that, you know, Brexit was dangerously close as well, and look at the division that has sown. So I think, you know, I agree with the bulk of what Stuart's been saying, to be honest with you, and I think it would be a huge blow for us. But I think if the Scottish people wanted that, then all I would say is, can you drop the border a little bit? Like Durham, we'll come with you. If this government, if Priti Patel does get in, or this government gets any worse, then I'm moving to Scotland. Quantum Skyline will put me up. I'll be there.
Now, I mean, I'm going to get into trouble because we had a holiday home in Hawick for a long time, and Quantum Skyline is sort of when Laura said Scottish people are amazing, she meant me, and I'm going to say the same. We were so happy there. The people of Hawick were just, and I am pronouncing that right, Neil Terry. By the way, so the people of Hawick were just wonderful. We loved going there. We loved the place, and the loss of Scotland will be a body blow. Do you think, Laura, that it'll mean a hard border as well? Will be any way we can avoid? Will we be able to have a Scotland protocol that we can then?
Oh my God! I mean, we can't even get the Northern Ireland protocol right, can we? I mean, we'll probably end up discussing that for another 50 years before that gets sorted. See, that's the thing as well. I don't want to have to, you know, get a visa or get a passport just to go to Scotland, because, like, I feel like they're my kin, you know. I don't want to have to stand in a queue to get there, and it would be such a shame. I'd be really sad about it. But I can absolutely see why the Scottish people feel like they've been thrown under a bus, and why they want their own sort of sense of self back. I totally get that, and, you know, again, democracy is the most important thing. So
I'm going to have to be a bit teacher. I'm so sorry, Neil Terry, if I've got the wrong person here. Sometimes a teacher does this. They shout at the wrong person in the class. Can the person who was accusing me of not being able to pronounce cradley properly, please own up now. Oh, that's it. Sort of no fun in this lesson. I'm so sorry, everybody. Just we'll move on from that issue. If I've got that wrong, I apologise. Jane, last thing. Labour Party reaction to this. I reckon it's a disaster. I mean, how is the Labour Party reacting to this idea, and is their reaction right or wrong?
So I believe they've said they don't think there should be an independence referendum, and they're not interested in any sort of in working with the SNP. Am I right? Well,
they're refusing to work with the SNP, but I mean, Lisa Nandy has said some incredibly awful things, hasn't she?
With the Labour Party, there's a lot of people in the Labour Party, and there's a wide range of views, I think, and I'm not sure that the leadership at this time particularly well represents the views of a lot of the members. I'm not sure that what's being said by the leadership at the moment is particularly helpful. I don't get the impression that there's a good understanding by the party of the reasons why we went from having so many MPs in Scotland to so few so quickly. There doesn't seem to be a lot of self-awareness around that, so it's not our strong point.
I think the Labour Party took Scotland for granted just as much as the Tories have taken Scotland for granted. I've got a question for you here, because what Lisa Nandy said was she congratulated the Spanish government on the way it had dealt with the independence movement in Catalonia. Now, listener, they were horrific the way they dealt with those people. Sort of basically beat them up in the street, and they had a referendum which was 90% for independence, and they just sent the police out and arrested all the people who had organised the referendum. It was a dreadful response. But what Lisa Nandy said quite fairly was that in the past, socialists have not defeated nationalists. And of course, she was referring to the Spanish Civil War. And the fact is that very often nationalism defeats socialism. And it just reminded me that socialism is opposed, isn't it, in nature to narrow nationalism. And so here's the question, Jane. As socialists, should we not be saying to the Scottish people, hang on a tick, unity of people, we're supposed to be standing together, not going off playing nationalism and with all the dangers that carries?
I think it goes back to what Stuart said, because I think if you asked any of us here what socialism is, I think the word equality would come into it quite near to the forefront. And Scotland hasn't been an equal partner in this union, really. When to think that there was no criteria set for the referendum for Brexit, they didn't think about the fact that all of the countries had an equal say. England just got it. Well, I don't know if it was England's way, but the views of the people in Scotland were disregarded because there were more votes in England. So that's not equal. That's not fair. And we're asking the Scottish people to reject their union with Europe, which is a really important thing. And I remember being really sad, and I completely understand why a lot of people voted leave. I do get it, and I've been really fortunate I went to university and I studied languages, and I spent time in Germany and other countries, and then I've worked with people in really nice working conditions from other countries, and that was a really lovely experience, and I felt a really strong European sense of identity, and I was quite shocked by how much so when the referendum results came out that I felt so sad that I actually I personally feel more European than British. But I understand that that's because of a privileged situation, privileged circumstances that a lot of people haven't had, and they feel different for very legitimate reasons. But so we've asked, with the Scottish people, either way, they've got to leave one union, And with a Tory government putting austerity upon them and causing misery and poverty in their country, I can see why some people might be erring towards keeping the European Union over the UK, United Kingdom Union, which is so toxic for them in so many ways.
Well, I mean, I just have this worry that we're at the moment all over Europe, we're disintegrating into these nasty little bristling nationalist states. And what you've just said about, if the Scots are choosing to leave Britain and go into with a wider union, actually that's a move away from nationalism, isn't it? It's a move towards internationalism. And I think there are many people in Britain, 48% of us, by the way, who actually would want to go back ourselves. Yes, I do. I've got one last question for you. Is this, I've just written here, not going away. I mean, do we just give in now? I mean, this is going to just keep coming back again and again and again and again, isn't it? I mean, do we just sort of let them have the referendum and sort it out now? Would that be the wisest thing?
I think England can't dictate to Scotland. Maybe legally we can, but morally we can't do that, and nothing good will come of it in the long run if we try to do it.
God bless you. Thank you very much. A worrying situation. I think the whole thing is very worrying, and I wish Scotland well. And as many people here, we've said yes. Please, can County Durham be part of Scotland? Just when I moved to Britain, down. Tim Dredge, appreciative of what you've said, right here, I'm still getting into trouble. They're still talking about cradley and the word pronounce, which is being blocked by because the first four letters are almost form. Okay, the other questions. And so I think this will be our last question, and we may just get a chance for a quick comment from somebody on the last one. But this is just pure joy. I think pure joy, pride, 50 years of pride, and you have to just be pleased about that. It's impossible not to feel good about that. Laura, I've got here, is this a landmark success? Has Pride reshaped British culture in the last 50 years? Have they mainstreamed the queer aesthetic? Is this just a victory for Pride?
Oh, John, I really want to say yes. I really want that to be true. And to some extent, I would agree. Yes, it has. The first Pride in 1972 really started the conversation. Really started to change things. We're in a much better position now. However, it does feel like things are going backwards a little bit. And Pride, as much as it is a celebration and it is joyous and colourful and beautiful and all about love and acceptance and tolerance, lovely. However, it is getting a bit commodified now. We do have large businesses now coming out with, pride flags on their merchandise and things just to sort of tap into that. And I don't believe, call me a cynic, I don't believe it is because they are, so passionate about LGBT rights at all. I think it's because they're trying to cash in. And also the rise in violence and killings and just the brutalization of trans people especially has just been shocking. It's just been getting worse and worse and worse, and austerity, poverty, all of that has a lot to do with it. I think I don't want to lay the blame at the Tories' door, as much as I'd love to do that usually, but there's a lot to be said for this finger pointing that this government seems to want to do. You know, there's something going wrong, and so the government tend to go, but look over here at these people. And we have such a toxic culture, as Jane alluded to earlier at the minute, that the hard-won rights of people are being stripped away. We see it in America at the minute with the abortion laws being stripped away. It's absolutely disgusting, and anything that there's a ban on gender affirming healthcare in America now as well. There's put over 300 new pieces of legislation through which are anti-gay legislation, and the don't say gay thing now. We are just rolling back the clock here. Jane, don't say gay. If you're on the telly in America, you're not allowed to do that anymore. You're not allowed to teach it in schools. It's just really, I feel like we're going backwards. I really do. And I know I don't have all the numbers. We have the intellect on the show with Jane and Stuart. I tend to boil politics down to its simplest form and use your heart. And this is absolutely devastating. So yes, get out, celebrate Pride, but remember what it's for. It wasn't just a party. It was for good reason. And now it needs to be for that reason again, I think.
I'm going to just disagree with you,
That's fine.
and just put another side and just ask what you think. I mean, I realise that there's violence, but there's violence towards a whole lot. There's violence towards women. I mean, these things are unacceptable. So I do realise that we haven't eliminated violence in our society. But if you compare that with the 1970s, when you had gangs of skinheads going around, please forgive me for saying this. I get into trouble for saying words like this but I sort of, it's in inverted commas. It's what they used to call it. It's not what, but gay bashing. They used to go actively seeking gay people to beat up. I'll carry on. But the second point is that as a counsellor, I went round knocking doors, and I always found, and I wrote a lot of things in the newspapers, I always found that there was a lot of hostility towards Muslims, there was a lot of hostility towards immigrants, there was a lot of hostility towards socialists, real viciousness and nastiness. But in fact, paedophiles, people would execute them horribly in the streets and cheer. But the gay couples were utterly accepted into society, at least in my neck of the woods. Nobody batted an eyelid, people would move in together and nobody would comment. There'd be no gossiping. It was just normal. And gay relationships. I did have one person who come on. My troll came on and said that he'd stop gay marriage. It was the next step was paedophilia. But the fact is that, with the exception of a few horrific bigots, do you not agree that gay love, and I'll use that word, has been utterly accepted in most sections of our society?
Unfortunately, no, I don't agree. I think it's not a race to the bottom, and we shouldn't have to go all the way back to how atrocious things were in 1972 just to say, oh, actually things aren't that good anymore. The fact of the matter is, we've got people who are still terrified to come out. We've got people who are committing suicide, who are self-harming. People like the guy from Years and Years, who is, famously gay now, and he's very out and proud, but he said, for years and years he wished he wasn't gay because he just couldn't live like that. There's obviously acceptance, but we're not there yet, just the same as we're not there yet with equality in most of its forms. Women still haven't got, the gender pay gap's still massive, domestic violence is still predominantly women are predominantly the victims of that. Racism, homophobia, it's all still there. And until it's completely gone, we should keep continuing to fight those fights. And as I say, we are going backwards. And if we allow this to slip now, there's no end to it. Where does it end? You know, these things are all very interlinked. And if we erode gay rights, eventually we'll erode women's rights and socialist rights and everybody else who's not a rich bigot. You know? So yeah, we just have to keep going until it's not needed anymore. And I just don't think we're there yet.
Some lovely comments on the comments timeline. Quantum Skyline wants more prominent people today to come out, particularly people like footballers, and sort of it'll just become part of our society. Mia points out, I think absolutely validly, Laura, that the trans issue is very different, and there's a huge amount of work to do there still. And you'll agree with that, presumably.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you for that short answer. Jane, what about you? Sort of, I mean, there are people talking about the actual Pride event itself and saying that it's become too commercial, too corporate, that it's just an annual pink washing. And I think Laura talked about that. I mean, has Pride lost the event itself lost its radical edge? I mean, we got Thatcher sort of saying, you know, it's not radical enough. We need to start making our mouths go again. I mean, what's your take on that?
I'm not sure. I mean, I don't feel like I have the right to have too much of an opinion, to be honest. You know, as a woman married to a man, is it really my business? But I don't really know what he means by radical. I think it's a really good thing, obviously, that the Pride movement's become so big, and I think it does help to embed within society that this is human beings, and you know, this is just human beings living their lives and being who they are. So I think we shouldn't take away from the good it does in that way. And in terms of the commercialization, I don't know if it's a stupid thing to say, but I wonder if it's got two sides to it, because of course these big corporations are cashing in like they're cashing on everything, but in another way, are they helping to make sure that you know, that being an LGBTQ person is a normal part of society, or you know, perceived to be as a normal part of society? The more these big companies buy into, you know, this and cash in on it, the more they make it sure that more people understand that this is acceptable and this is okay. And I don't know if I've expressed myself very well, or if I've just sounded offensive there, so I'm sorry if I've sounded a bit
sort of. I mean, I'm going to and you can disagree with me if you want, but when you sort of say I don't know whether I have the right to, I've always, and I've got my head in my hands for it sometimes, but I like LGBTQA, where the A stands for allies, because then I can be part of that movement, and sort of, and you know, I think I agree with you that sometimes we speak as outsiders, not understanding properly what it's like for an insider. And so in that sense, you're uncomfortable being an ally, but you just rely on people to understand that sort of, you know, I may be being slightly inappropriate, but it's meant with all the best support and love and care. I'm an ally. I'm part of this movement too, and sort of, and I know you are. Sort of, what do you reckon to Sadiq Khan citing, you know, referencing Oslo and sort of saying that there's still a danger to the LGBTQA community of discrimination, bias, and violence? I mean, presumably, with Laura, you're wholly in support of that statement.
Yeah, sorry, I thought you were asking Laura for a second. Yeah, I think he's absolutely right. And what happened in Oslo was a really terrible reminder of just You know, we're such a divided society across the world. There's so much hatred and division, and and the LGBTQ A or plus community, and in particular trans people, obviously, I'm shocked by the level of hatred and abuse directed at trans people. It's horrific, and it's very difficult to understand. But it feels like people always need to direct hatred at someone, and the trans community at the moment is really suffering, being, you know, on the receiving end of that for no reason really, except from that's just how hatred works, isn't it? It's not logical.
I mean, I'm straight down the line with Quantum Skyline on this when he says love is love. And the thing I always say is that, you know, you're on this earth for 70 years and sort of don't waste it trying to love somebody you don't really love, you know? Not worth it. Okay, thank you so much. Stuart, come back to Labour. How is Labour handling the Pride movement at the moment? I mean, I just felt sick. Angela Rayner, Pride is protest, but the story is love. I mean, how is that really offended me? Trite and gushing. I mean, are Labour on the right side of this debate? Are they strong enough in it?
I think that they could be stronger. But I don't think that the way to do that is to, you know, when Pride comes around to get your photographs taken. I think you've got to be embedded in the movement all year round. And that's, you know, something that needs to be worked upon. But I do believe that Pride is an incredibly powerful political movement in itself. And, you know, we can't take the politics out of that. It is, you know, overtly a political statement, you know, just every aspect of it. You know, you see a drag queen, you know, a drag queen is a political statement about, you know, gender, you know, about empowerment in itself. And if we were, you know, as close as we should be with the movement, those conversations will be dead easy, those recognitions that they will be dead easy. And when people say, you know, love is love, I absolutely agree that love is love, but we need to recognise that people of the LGBT community, their lives are different. Their love is 100% equal, but how that love comes about is completely different and foreign for people. And there's a need for understanding, and that only comes around by, you know, being there all the time, not just once or twice a year for photographs.
Thank you very much indeed. Right. I'm at a bit of a loss, Laura. I think I'm going to bring the programme to an end. We haven't got time to deal with the last question properly, so I'm not even going to start it. A lot of people beginning to drop in information which says that as some people predicted, Johnson's just replacing the resignations with other people. Zahawi's been made Chancellor. Somebody else has been made. Donlan is new Secretary of Education. Somebody's been putting out the NHS, and sort of that's interesting, isn't it? Don't you think? One last question for you all. Are you going to the gala?
Yes.
Laura.
Yes, of course. I'm so excited. Women's Banner Group's Silk Banner will be getting blessed at the cathedral this year. I'm really, really super duper excited for that. We're going to march both of our banners as well. I'll drop the link to where we're meeting and everything on our Socialist Think Tank pages. If anybody wants to join us, you're more than welcome. Anybody who is a nice person is welcome, and tolerant and inclusive. Please do join us. And also I've kind of got to go between that and my union banner, so I'm going to be rushing about all day, and then there's another project that's happening that I've asked to be involved in, but I'm not allowed to talk about it. So it is going to be insane, but it's going to be so worth it. I'm so excited.
That's smashing. Yes, absolutely fabulous. Stuart, will you be there?
Yes, yeah, I've got very little option really. I'll be there marching with Unite, my union.
Have Unite got a stall? Will you be on the stall afterwards?
Yeah, we'll have a stall, we'll have a tent, we'll have banners, we have our band, I think, this year, which will be good. We'll be loud, and we'll see where the adventure takes us, because that's what the gala is, isn't it? Bit of an adventure.
Jane, you won't be at the gala.
I won't be there. I'll just be being jealous of everyone else that is there.
No, sort of. It's okay. It means that you'll have a different moment of the week next week, and so everybody else will be. Oh, what I did at the gala.
Gala.
So I once we discussed this on the show before, haven't we? And sort of we found that County Durham's just about as divided as we are on it, and sort of adjacent. It isn't that one area of the county. Adjacent villages were swearing blind. It was one or the other, and just so funny. If you're going to the gala, so I would think that gala is just too posh.
I think gala is. Yeah, the gala.
Anyway, if you're going to the gala, look out for Stuart and Laura and give them a wave, and look out for Mike Dixon also, who's on the Palestine stall. There's a stall for Palestine there. Look out for him and give a bit of love there. I'm going to bring it to an end. Laura, have you got any socialist think tank news that you want to share?
Just to say that surprisingly, in the last couple of weeks, our membership has been rocketing. So please join the club. Find us on our website, socialistthinktank.com, and become a member. You can do so for free. You get an invite to our Discord channel where you can get involved in all of our wonderful chats. We talk about all sorts of things. You can even get involved with shows and even come on if you want to. You don't have to. It's not a stipulation. So join us, and please do feel free to donate as well so we can keep making our shows. Just become part of it. And thank you for watching. Go like, share, subscribe, spread the news.
And the problem with inviting people onto the show is that, the pressure when they're faced with three such awesome panelists as I've had on tonight. Nobody will dare come on, sort of, having listened to you three. You've been absolutely fabulous. Congratulations. Well done. Really good. And to you listeners, thank you for all the fun and the insights and the knowledge of your comments. Thank you for listening. You are so appreciated. Sort of wonderful. And carry the banner, and spread the news. Socialist think tank, socialism. And let's move on. God bless. Goodbye. Thank you, team.
Thank you.
God bless, listeners.
Bye.
Bye.
Keep the red flag flying here.